Alrighty, hello everyone, and I'm actually inviting Curtis back to stage here. And welcome to Chain in Focus featuring Boba Network. For those of you who are not already familiar, these Chain in Focus sessions are part of a series where we welcome on the blockchain foundations behind the chains with which DIA has partnered and deployed to share with us information about their chain, their vision, and of course to explore the significance of DIA's integration into their ecosystem. We've seen across the blockchain and cryptocurrency landscape, there's a multitude of layer one and layer two blockchains launching. And at DIA, as a cross-chain Oracle provider, it is of vital importance to be up to speed, following industry trends, and of course, integrating with as many of these chains as possible. And so we also intend for this series to be educational, engaging, and interesting for all of the extended DIA community and beyond. So with that said, sit tight and get comfortable as we dive into Chain in Focus and welcome on a multi-chain layer 2 optimistic rollup that aims to unlock the potential of rollup technology and enable interoperability between blockchains and the real world. That is Boba Network. And so at this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage Curtis Schlaufman, who's the global head of marketing at Enya Labs, which is the foundation supporting the development and growth of Boba. Curtis, it's great to have you with us here today. How's everything going?
Going pretty good. Just prepping for the holidays. Still gotta figure out a Christmas gift for my girlfriend, but don't tell her that.
Love it. I feel like many are in similar positions right now. It's very relatable. We're also joined here today by Paul Claudius, who's the co-founder and head of BD over here at DIA. Paul, how's everything going on your end?
Yeah, Curtis, can absolutely relate here. So this pre-Christmas craziness. At the same time, we had a bunch of projects here at DIA, which we obviously wanted to tackle before year end, which is looking very good. So lots of things going around, but exciting times. And always really excited about these sessions tonight. So thanks to Lynn for hosting them again, and Curtis, great to have you here tonight.
Absolutely agreed. These are great. I know Paul's joining us from CET timing, so thanks for joining us in your evening there, Paul. Let's kick things right off. Curtis, we always love to start by giving everybody who's listening here in the audience the opportunity to get to know our speakers a bit, and just to briefly hear about the origin story of their background, maybe how they got into crypto. So before we dive into the details of Boba, could you give us a bit of an introduction on yourself and really when it all started for you?
Sure. I've been a marketer pretty much since I graduated college. 37 now, so almost 14, 14 years or so. And I'll just fast forward to how I got involved in the space. I have a traditional marketing background, led B2B, B2C, and SaaS companies and the marketing efforts. Typically worked in a startup background, and a few years ago, I got asked to advise a company that offered digital assets on regulated exchanges in Europe. So you could buy Bitcoin or Ethereum on a regulated exchange. So if in Europe, you know that that region is light years ahead of the U.S. in terms of regulation. And eventually became a full timer there. It was a really exciting space. That was that was my first bull run back in 2020, 2021. So it was a really interesting time. Started trading crypto myself, bought my first Satoshis in Bitcoin, bought Ethereum, and really started learning and taking a deep dive into crypto and blockchain. Eventually, about a year ago now, December 5th was my 1 year anniversary. I got hired at Enya Labs, which is the core service provider to Boba Network, a layer 2 scaling solution. And I've been here for about a year now. And working in an infrastructure company has given me a whole new level of insight into blockchain and how the industry works, and a lot of key components to it.
That's great. Thank you for the background there. And you mentioned joining or really seeing things in the bull market in 2020. That's when you dove in. But I know how much you guys have now built in the bear market as well. So it's great that we'll be able to dive into both sides of this today. And quickly, I want to also hear from Paul. For any of those who don't usually turn into our chain and focus, Paul, maybe you could give us a quick summary as well on I guess it'd be great to hear your origin story behind founding DIA.
Yeah, love to. I mean, hope for not everyone this like kind of this old broken record here. I'm sharing in these chain focus sessions, so I'll keep it brief. But so my background was in management finance, and I spent quite some time in e-commerce, and got more and more curious about Web3, blockchain, and at some point was for me kind of clear that this is really transformational technology, like maybe once of a lifetime technological shift we'll be moving through. And so I just had to go full time into the space, and quite early on, I realized and looked into like data and how can data be used in the space, that oracles were really in a nascent state. It was like 2017, 2018, and it was kind of obvious that we'll probably move into a cross-chain, multi-chain ecosystem, which will be somehow interconnected. And I really felt back then, and luckily still do today, that oracles were not catering in the best possible way with their architecture to cross-chain use cases. So this was really the founding story of DIA, trying to solve a need. It took till 2020, I think, when DIA really changed how oracles operate and can contribute to what's being built in DeFi. But curiosity with the belief that this is transformational, and then focusing on really this core problem throughout the last years.
It's a really great background and actually a great transition into a lot of the topics we'll get in here today, as you were referencing these early, cross-chain and multi-chain beliefs here. And it's something that so evidently the Boba team or the Enya Labs team has placed a great belief in as well. And this is sort of like a synergy that we share across teams. So glad that you prefaced that, and we'll definitely get more into that. I'm adding Curtis back on stage here. Seems like we've lost him. He's dropped out again for a sec. So let's wait for him to join back in. I'm going to invite him back. In the meantime, so there's so much that I'm really excited to get into today. I'm actually struggling to limit myself on the amount of topics that we'll cover here today. I've had to take some of the things out that I've wanted to get into. So Curtis, I see you're back on stage. Perhaps we can dive right in. For those who aren't familiar with Boba or any of Boba's history, maybe could you give us an introduction into Boba? Let's just dive right in, and maybe you can give us an update on the status of the Boba chain today and how you guys are positioning yourselves in the blockchain landscape.
Sure. So Boba is the red. Well, no, I wouldn't say the remnant. It's not the right word. But Boba used to be OMG Network, and then one of the providers or servicers of OMG Network asked the current CEO and of Enya Labs to sort of run the blockchain. And long story short, transitioned OMG into Boba Network. At the time, OMG was a plasma chain. Boba Network then became a fork of Optimism and an optimistic rollup. Boba Network is still an optimistic rollup. However, we no longer, we have our own code base now. So we're entirely separate from Optimism and very, very unique. And our key differentiator is that, or not our, it's a decentralized network, but the key differentiator of Boba Network is that it is the only hybrid blockchain that delivers off-chain data and compute. And we enable this through what we call hybrid compute. So, as we all know, one of the key issues with blockchain is the scaling issues it has, and always will have in regards to compute. So, a lot of times, and Oracle's helped solve this problem as well. Is if you're not able to bring on highly uh, compute load algorithms or even enterprise data onto the blockchain. However, hybrid compute is able to overcome this issue. So you could sort of build any DApp with any comp or compute scaling issues in mind. So, as an example, let's say you wanted to, you've built a Web3 game on in Boba's ecosystem, and you want to have more dynamic dialogue with your characters or in-game play. You could effectively run a ChatGPT plugin and have more dynamic dialogue in your Web3 game, whereas you wouldn't be able to do that in any other blockchain ecosystem. So that's our big differentiator there in terms of Boba Network and the unique abilities of hybrid compute and overcoming a lot of those scaling issues that the current blockchain environment currently has in front of us. And outside of that, traditionally with layer twos in general, you're going to get faster and cheaper transactions. That's what a rollup does in particular. So if you're unfamiliar, in the past, all transactions were settled on a layer one, specifically, you have Ethereum or Bitcoin or even BNB chain, and they take a long time to settle, and then they would be prohibitively expensive at times, often ranging in the few hundreds of dollars per transaction, depending on what you're trying to do. The first layer twos were optimistic rollups, you also had Plasma, but the first layer twos that really garnered adoption. So if you look at Arbitrum or Optimism, they are rollups, and what that means is that they can take a batch of transactions from a layer one and process those transactions in what we call a rollup. So think of like grabbing that batch and settling them all at once, and then effectively you can still utilize the security of the layer one by finalizing all those transactions on the layer one. So layer twos have solved a huge problem in the marketplace, and all layer twos at the moment are still working on becoming faster, cheaper, more efficient to really try to position the industry to garner more widespread adoption.
Thank you for that really comprehensive background there. You covered a bunch of the topics I was really interested to dive into here. Just to sort of highlight and reiterate some of the points here. Boba's usage of the OP stack there, and really was really interested in getting into this hybrid compute aspect, which is empowering the Boba network to bring the power of Web 2 on chain, as you referenced. There's one other detail that really did stand out to me, which is Boba's dual token fee model. The way I understand it, or the way that I read it, is that users can pay network fees in both Boba's native currency, which is Boba, or the protocol's native currency. Can you share more about this feature? When we discuss the protocol, are you referencing, or rather, is the documentation referencing dApps on Boba, or is it the underlying chain? That's actually the ultimate settlement layer, whether it being Ethereum or BNB.
Yeah, it's ultimately the underlying chain. So if you can, on Ethereum, you can either settle those transactions in Ethereum or Boba token, and the same works on BNB and Boba token. And really, I think Boba was one of the first, if not the first, blockchain to enable dual token fees. And that's really for optionality and the future-looking approach of that cross-chain iteration and sort of moving liquidity across chains as well. We wanted to enable users to have the ability to stay sort of more nimble when they're executing a cross-chain transaction or experience. So they could use Boba in any of those interactions, and of course still leave them with the option of using the native token of whatever chain they're working with. So it was more of a user experience and transaction ease thought to build into the Boba ecosystem or environment.
I must say, I absolutely love this feature. It both, enables, like you said, this user experience enhancement where people who are engaging in the Boba ecosystem have the opportunity to use Boba, and there's additional token utility there. But you're also not limiting the access of liquidity of users, by actually still enabling ETH payments or BNB payments as the transaction fees there. So. I really think that's a great feature, and glad we got the chance to dive into that. So we've done a bunch of sort of background so far on the technical components, and I'd say it's very obvious from a technical perspective why Boba is attractive for developers. I'd like to transition here and take a look inside the Boba ecosystem itself. Curtis, could you share some insights into some of the exciting partnerships that Boba has announced, and really curious to hear your thoughts on how you see the Boba ecosystem developing over the coming years.
Sure. And I'm going to be pretty transparent here too, as well. So, as you may have noticed, Arbitrum and Optimism are dominating Ethereum as layer twos. Boba Network, we have we definitely do get daily transactions on Ethereum, but it's not really enough to sustain over the long term. So Enya Labs, as the service or core service provider to Boba Network, that's one of the reasons that we shifted Boba Network to become multi-chain. So initially we had launched another couple of chains just to see where it could start getting traction, but BNB ended up being a clear standout for us. At this time last year, there wasn't any traction on Boba BNB in terms of daily transactions. However, we have an awesome, as Enya Labs, we have an awesome business development team that are ran out of Dubai, and they've made a lot of great inroads with the community there. Not only Web3 projects, but government entities. So, about 6 months ago, we signed probably one of our biggest partnerships with the DMCC, which is actually a government-affiliated agency out of Dubai, and they help onboard and facilitate Web3 projects because Dubai is very focused on growing their Web3 community, providing resources, and being a hub globally for blockchain projects and cryptocurrency. So our partnership with DMCC enabled us to get introduced to a couple of up-and-coming Web3 dApps that were since integrated into Boba's ecosystem, specifically Boba BNB. And over that time period, we were able to scale our daily transactions from effectively 0 to roughly over 100,000 per day, which has been really exciting for us and really rewarding as well. Boba Network now has over 30 million lifetime transactions since its inception, and over 75% of those have come in the last year. So even though last year was a bear market, it was our highest year of growth in the history of the chain. So that's certainly a standout for us. And we are really excited about what many believe is the very beginning of a bull market that we're currently in. A couple of other partners, of course, we're super excited about DIA. and the offering you guys provide for Boba builders and their ecosystem, and getting the best Oracle and up price feeds, other things of that sort, to enable them to deliver a seamless experience for whatever dApp they're building that integrates DIA. And then what we're really focused on building in the future is leveraging hybrid compute, because we do see that as a pathway towards mass adoption. Unfortunately, not many folks are familiar with hybrid compute, or developers in that regard, but that's going to be a heavy focus over the next year, particularly because we do believe that you have to get some sort of enterprise adoption to really propel the industry forward. And we see hybrid compute as a tool that'll help us pathfind that way forward in that sense.
Thank you for that background. I want to first, of course, say congratulations on the DMCC partnership. I think that it's really great to see this all coming to life, especially with, as you referenced, the highest year of growth being in the bear market. These are really some of the more subjective yet super important metrics, right? Of actually continued growth in the bear market, or as some like to call it, the build market. And I also appreciate you elaborating on the importance of Oracle tooling and of DIA's integration on Boba. I think that's actually a great segue or transition here to hear from Paul a little bit. Maybe Paul, could you share some background and rather shed some light into the benefit of DIA's deployment on Boba, and how this will impact and benefit developers building DeFi and similar dApps on Boba?
Yeah, I mean, love to. So I guess I was just scrolling through our Telegram chat. So I think it was back in 2022 when we started opening the conversation with the Boba team, and I think we learned out through this conversation like the ambitious roadmap you guys are having. And Curtis, thanks for like updating us here on the latest. So when we are considering working together with different L1s and L2s, we always try to understand the relevance of the builders and their positioning within an ecosystem. And I think this clearly stood out for Boba, that this was key and center. So we really believe that DIA oracles, being a common good on chains such as Boba, can significantly impact the creativity and the new tooling enabling dApps and use cases, which are really driving the ecosystem and the different things you can do actually. So we were quite excited that we were able to launch on Boba, and we see this from the builders community. So now after like the integration, we see a lot of really interesting conversations, and are much looking forward to support dApps, because when we start to support an ecosystem, it's not just like the basic tooling we try to provide for everyone to live, but we also try to support new projects which have their proprietary and unique needs. And I think there's a lot of super exciting things coming, which we'll, I guess, see more in the next months to come.
Appreciate those insights there. And while I have you both on stage, and having recently heard from both of you, I want to actually transition and have more of an open discussion topic here, and kind of discuss the fragmentation that we've seen of layer 2 blockchains, and how both of these teams, both Boba and DIA, are actually tackling this issue. So Curtis, as we've sort of addressed here, in this industry of increasing fragmentation among layer 2 networks, really one of the things that stands out most, as we've discussed, is Boba launching as an inherently multi-chain focused layer 2 scaling solution. And it's doing so by its support of multiple different chains, both currently on Ethereum, but also on top of BNB. Can you share some insights into what this actually means for, I know you mentioned on the user side here. Can we take a high look at what, how you guys are tackling this issue and how some of the benefits that developers and users are experiencing due to Boba's multi-chain positioning?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a few reasons that I can list off, but really, it's ultimately we provide developers the choice of what ecosystem they may want to build in. Ethereum and BNB, their user bases probably alter quite a bit. Where Ethereum is sort of the birthplace and king of decentralized finance. Others may view BNB as the central gaming hub in Web3. And it certainly has overtaken, I believe, Ethereum in daily transactions, but mostly because Ethereum is dominated by L2s now. So if it presents users or developers a choice on where they want to build in terms of what is their target audience. So, we're seeing more DeFi affiliated dApps focus on Ethereum, whereas we see a lot more gaming dApps come and build on BNB because they have more of a gaming focus there. So it's primarily about their own product positioning, and then internally for us, in terms of fragmentation and liquidity, that does present issues because not only do we have to maintain one blockchain, where when majority of the industry they're only able to do that, and really we've had to split the difference there in terms of resourcing on the engineering side as well. So it's presented a challenging problem for us, but one that we continually try to tackle. For instance, we do rely a lot on our bridging partners, and so special thanks to them that enable us or our users to have a better experience when they're doing cross-chain actions. And our engineering team is currently working on a feature called Lightbridge, which effectively will enable a user to what we call teleport from one chain to the other instantaneously in terms of the funds, if they want to bring them from BNB to Ethereum, or back down to the base, or Boba BNB or Boba Ethereum, or whether they want to bring them back down to the base layer of those blockchains as well. So a couple of different things, but I just want to, just the high level there.
Really, really exciting stuff actually with the light bridge. And this is really something that perfectly answered the question here and tackling this issue of fragmentation. Being able to seamlessly teleport your assets from BNB to Ethereum on, when Boba is supporting both of them, it certainly seems like a very solid way. It definitely paves the way for how you guys are tackling this. Let's take a look, because I know from Paul's perspective, I'm sure that this is quite a unique topic as well, right? So, Paul, can we hear from you on how DIA is tackling the fragmentation issue of asset pricing and liquidity on the Oracle side? And maybe you can shed some light into actually how this might be synergistic with Boba's multi-chain approach.
Yeah. So fragmentation is kind of our calling. Nobody likes it, but we see kind of in our role as being the ones trying to bring transparency into an ever increasing fragmentation across the ecosystem. Obviously, like better bridges do connect ecosystems, but I think when we're looking back the last years and months, I think there's an increasing level of fragmentation. And it becomes more and more important, we believe, to understand what this actually means. So a token on chain A is not a token on chain B. Liquidity of these tokens may differ vastly. A dApp deployed on one chain won't be able to interact on the other chain directly, liquidate something. So bringing transparency to this semi-connected ecosystem and providing dApps which also try to basically overcome the issue of fragmentation, possibly being able to execute on multiple chains, we can equip them with price feeds, knowingly what liquidity they can tap on a given chain. So we hate and love fragmentation at the same time, trying to make this a bit better. And this is this is super exciting. And obviously connecting super well to what Boba is trying to achieve, connecting all these different ecosystems. We're happy to support in bringing this additional level of transparency for building really exciting dApps, which can benefit from this fragmentation and their users.
Absolutely. I love the way you phrased it, in that, you know, it's both like a caveat, but something that we're also embracing to, you know, help foster innovation and growth on various chains. I think that we have time for one more general discussion topic here before we transition into closing. And really, this is just a high level discussion about growth drivers. And, you know, as we're on the topic of liquidity, development, and tooling, I'd love to hear from both of you guys, you know, some your perspectives on what are the key growth drivers to get a new to get a new ecosystem off the ground and to attract developers, liquidity, and users. Curtis, I know you mentioned already how, you know, you guys are really focused on leveraging hypercompute as a pathway towards mass adoption. Maybe this is a good chance to give us a little bit more insight into, you know, some of the types of applications that you expect to really come alive with hypercompute, and some more of these key growth drivers that you guys are looking to really fuel Boba's growth in the coming years.
Yeah, I think I'll talk about growth drivers from a high level perspective to start, and then I'll dig a little deeper on what that means for Boba Network. So the big growth driver for any dApp or ecosystem in Web3 is speculation. If you don't have speculation, you're not going to be able to, or speculation or incentives and or both, you're not going to be able to build a community. That's what drives growth top of funnel. That's what drives users. Developers care about building in a thriving ecosystem and potentially, you know, getting grants to build out their dApp, to utilize those funds to build a community. And Web3 users care about entertainment and the ability to either get rewards, incentives, and speculate. Blockchain doesn't work without speculation, at least currently. So if you don't have a token, potential of dropping a token or an airdrop, then you're not going to get very much activity. So with Boba Network, since the network had already issued a token a couple of years ago, very early on, and to OMG holders, Boba Network lacks speculation on its own. It lacks the ability to do continual airdrops to potential token holders on a consistent basis, where, as you see with Optimism or Arbitrum, Arbitrum was pretty much teasing an airdrop for a year plus, and eventually they dropped their token earlier this year. Optimism still does a lot of token or airdrops. We see a lot of ecosystems utilizing platforms like Galaxy for users to fulfill quests in exchange for tokens or potential rewards, or minting NFTs that they can exchange for money. So, you know, for me, coming from a Web2 background, it was sort of like a very upside down business model where you're effectively paying people to use your dApp or your ecosystem, especially when it came to some developers. Because for me, it was like, if I'm going to build a website and I go to Google Cloud or AWS and say, hey, how much are you going to pay me to build a website using your infrastructure? They wouldn't even answer me back. I'd get turned away. So very different dynamic that has been a bit of a surprise once I got ground floor of the Web3 sort of infrastructure. So what does that mean for Boba Network moving forward? We are very focused on partnerships because that's where we can actually get some wins and help build our ecosystem. And outside of DMCC, we've partnered with a couple of incubators that'll feed early stage Web3 projects into the Boba ecosystem. And those early stage projects, of course, can build incentives and rewards and potential airdrops into their roadmap and their growth plan to attract users. And ultimately, we do or would like to see the industry pivot into a more traditional sort of top of funnel acquisition strategy as it relates to Web2 businesses or enterprise. And we see hybrid compute enabling, as I mentioned earlier, the adoption for enterprise companies to build blockchain or Web3 solutions into their current Web2 business models, and hybrid compute enabling them to bring those enterprise companies or entities to enable them to utilize their data, their algorithms, or their anything that has that requires high compute requirements. So as we position hybrid compute, of course, we would love for Web3 developers to take a look at that, but that requires us kind of getting on the front end of a developer's journey because you have many developers building dApps with current Web3 sort of roadblocks in place in terms of scaling. So as we go out, we're looking at hackathons or incubators where developers are still ideating or thinking of really cool Web3 dApps that they could potentially build. So we want to get out in front of them before they begin that journey. Or even, if you're a Web3 developer and you think hybrid compute can really propel your current dApp forward, we're always happy to talk with you as well. So yeah, long-winded. Apologize for that, but that's where we're at currently.
No need to apologize at all. I think that was a really succinct and really much made a lot of sense, right? We see that there's like extreme competition across the landscape with airdrops and incentives, and you took us through the history of that and how you guys are positioning towards partnerships, especially with regard to bringing the adoption of Web3 technologies into Web2 business models. Really thought that this was a really interesting perspective that you have here on behalf of Boba, and completely makes sense. I want to thank you for sharing all that with us. Absolutely. And maybe we can hear from Paul quickly on this as well. Paul, any thoughts here on what Curtis just said? And, from the DIA side, what do you see in terms of key growth drivers when either evaluating an ecosystem or even considering, where to deploy DIA oracles into which ecosystems?
Yeah, I really like your perspective, Curtis, on what it takes to make an ecosystem grow, and I think there's a lot of truth, and oftentimes like capital and incentives are not being discussed because there's a lot of focus on the builders, which I think makes sense, and I think it's a combination, as you were also saying. It needs to be really a nuanced and well-versed combination of different elements that are required for an ecosystem to grow. When it comes to tooling, I think nonetheless this is a long-term ecosystem growth driver. I think there's like short-term acceleratory forces and there are long-term ones. So I think tooling attracts builders. Builders obviously need at some point capital to make the applications worthwhile their time building in these ecosystems, but it's a combination. And I think throughout the cycle, you see what incentives are more relevant than others. And so although these bear markets obviously are from an investor's perspective, and if you're bootstrapping a business, tough times, I think it does act as a great filter to see who's still really convicted and who's sticky within an ecosystem and what ecosystems make it through a beer market. And here, there's an absence of capital, there's an absence of incentives, possibly. So what's left? Left is tooling, great teams, great communities. So I think these are the long-term, very sticky growth drivers, which will push an ecosystem no matter what part of the cycle you're in. And then hopefully, right, maybe 2024, there are some different other there's a different macro environment. We're moving into a more favorable market from a capitalist investor's perspective. Then ecosystem requires more than just great tooling, what we obviously love to provide. It also requires the right incentives. So I think, as you were rightfully pointing out, Curtis, it's obviously a combination for us of we are very much focusing on providing the right tooling so ecosystems can flourish, and they can do that throughout any market cycle.
I think that was really great to hear this perspective as well from the tooling side of things. And we often see in this space, it's like this chicken and egg problem with regard to launching chains. What comes first, the builders or the tooling? And as you mentioned, these types of
Definitely tooling, right?
Yeah, from what you said, yeah, definitely. Because I mean, I think you explained it very well. These are the sticky drivers that help fuel growth in an ecosystem. Really well said there. I want to be respectful of time here. We're coming up almost on 45 minutes into the call, so maybe we can transition into forward-looking, what's next, and how to get in touch with Boba. So, Curtis, could you give anybody in the audience who's either on the user side or on the developer side, maybe a call to action? What resources would you recommend they go to if they want to take next steps?
Yeah, just go to boba.network. That is the Boba website. And there they're able to learn everything they need to learn about integrating onto Boba, reaching out to our team to get in contact. And then we do have some excellent material on hybrid compute. And of course, Boba's dev docs are there as well. So a plethora of resources on the site. We did just rebrand the visual look of the brand a few months ago. So that was something that I was pretty stoked about because I thought our older brand was a bit ugly. Now it's a bit more professional looking and got a slicker site. Just as an aside.
I love it, Curtis. You've been pretty much so candid throughout this call. I really appreciate the background here and the honesty throughout it all. Congratulations on the rebranding. I was just reviewing it. It is certainly very sleek. Paul, maybe anybody in the audience who wants to access DIA tooling on Boba or on any of the chains that we're currently serving.
Yeah, so I think easiest here is everybody who's listening in probably currently on X, give us a follow on X. You'll find like a link out to our homepage, which can direct you into our Discord, where there's like people from our community, people from the team happy to support you, whether you're a builder, whether you're contributor. On the marketing side, that's a great place to start. Obviously, developers can find also lots of resources directly hitting up our docs. And yeah, that's the best way. Also, feel free just to DM us, send us on Telegram a message. We're happy to help.
Absolutely. And also for anybody listening who wants to learn more about the direct integration of DIA into Boba Network, go ahead and check the tweet that's pinned to the top of the spaces here. It gives a bit of background on both teams and more again on how to access this tooling and how this partnership came to life. And, this is actually just a post from about 2 months ago. So, while we're having the Chain and Focus session now, I think it's really the beginning of what is to come between both of these teams in terms of our collaborations. So, Curtis, I want to say thank you so much, and to the Enya Labs and Boba team for joining us here, and for all the great correspondence we've had as partners so far. and really only the tip of the iceberg in terms of, I think, what can be accomplished here between our teams. I'm excited to see how this continues to come to life in the future. So thank you very much, Curtis.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is fun. Always happy to do these.
And this is only episode 3 of Chain in Focus, but I imagine a future where, let's say, we're on episode 25, and it's revisiting the Boba Network, right? Revisiting our partnership in Boba. So hopefully we get to have the chance to have you guys back in a year or two and revisit this, or even less time, and really have a before and a later, instance of all that's come to life since then. Paul, I want to also say thank you for joining in late on your end here. Maybe give you the chance to say any closing thoughts.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thanks, Curtis. It's super fun always to spend a bit of time getting the high level perspective on from our partners on where they're heading with the ecosystem. And Dylan, thanks so much for modding. Always a pleasure, and everyone who's spending time here with us and listening in.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody in the audience. We would not have great sessions without those of you in the audience as well. Otherwise, we'd just be talking to ourselves. So thanks for everybody listening live and on record. Happy holidays. Curtis, good luck gift shopping in the upcoming days here. And we'll see you guys all online. Thanks again for tuning in to Chain in Focus.
I'm taking ideas. DM me. Thank you.
All
right,
guys. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your days. And we'll see you on the next episode of Chain in Focus. Bye-bye.